Throughout our lives, many of us will be tested by a traumatic life event. These midlife jolts can either propel us or derail us, taking us back to square one. These jolts can create a lifetime of purpose, create new relationships, new careers, new worldviews, and a clarity of your mission on earth. On January 15th, 2009, I had one of those jolts along with 154 other passengers when I survived the plane crash known as the Miracle on the Hudson. So over the last 12 years, the most often asked question I still get is, how did you get back on a plane after you went through a plane crash? See, many people from that day still haven't got back on a plane. But one thing I learned is this: it's easy to blame events. But if you keep blaming events, you never give yourself the opportunity to grow. See, I didn't blame a worldwide recession in 2009 or a plane crash for my happiness and fulfillment. I found two ways to help me turn that turmoil of that time into triumph. You have to change your worldview or your life conditions, or both. And that's how I got back on a plane. So over the next about 40 minutes, I want to share with you an experience that no one here would ever want to go through, about the most defining moments of our lives, the key tenets of personal leadership, resourcefulness, and the ability to make decisions come to the forefront. I'll share with you 5 strategies that I not only learned, but used and now teach to how to turn any turmoil you may be having in your life into triumph. But before I start, let me ask a question. I'm sure some of you have seen the movie Sully. Have you seen the movie Sully? Some of you all have? Yeah, I thought Clint Eastwood did a fantastic job. And Tom Hanks was amazing. And I was very honored and humbled to be a very small part of that experience. But one thing that all the passengers knew then, and we all know now, is this: that movie was not about the plane crash. It was about the journey of the captain. And the crew did a fabulous job that day, and I forever give them credit. But now, let me tell you my story. Let me take you inside a miracle and show you how you can turn a turmoil of a situation like that into a victory. January 15th, 2009 was a Thursday. That week started for me on Tuesday in Sarasota, Florida. On Wednesday, we were working in a manufacturing plant in Petersburg, Virginia. That afternoon, we packed up and headed north to New York City because the next day we were going to be working in a distribution center in Brooklyn. Now, I don't know if anybody here's ever been or worked inside of a distribution center, but they normally open up quite early in the morning. This one opened at 2 o'clock in the morning. So our day started about 5. We got done about 10. Now, I travel over 100,000 miles a year, what I do in my job, so any chance to get home to my wife and my 4 kids a little early, I usually try to take advantage of that. So about 10 o'clock that morning, I called our travel agent to work with her, and she put me on flight 1549. I gave up a first-class seat at 5 o'clock for seat 15A on 1549 on January 15th. I think there's something with the number 15 going on with me. And I got to the airport a little bit early that day, and the planes were delayed, but if you've ever been out of LaGuardia, that's nothing unusual, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. It was 11 degrees and snowing, so that's nothing unusual. And I was one of the first set of passengers to board the plane that day because of my status with US Airways. I was a chairman. I was top tier. So I went back to my seat at seat 15A. There's 4 rows behind that left wing. And I did exactly what I did every single time when I got on a plane then. And I hallucinate what you do when you get on a plane now. I went back to my seat. I put my briefcase down, put my wallet in the briefcase, pulled the magazine out, and I started to read. I did not listen to the flight attendants. I did not know where those exits were. I did not read that little brochure they always tell you to read. But I guarantee you every single time I get on a plane now, I do. Because now I know how important it is to be aware on a plane. Now, anybody here's ever gone out of LaGuardia. I've done it a lot. And if you know LaGuardia, the runways go out into the bay. And when the planes take off, they always head north. That's the common air pattern. Nothing unusual about the takeoff. But about 60 seconds after we took off is when I heard the explosion. And it was a loud explosion. Man, I had never heard anything on a plane like that before. So that got my attention. So I looked up and looked out the window. I saw fire coming out underneath the left wing. So I knew something had happened, but I fly so often that plane lost an engine. No big deal. It really didn't startle me too much at that moment. But see, that's where I think God's grace entered for the first moment on this flight. Because no one on the plane knew at that moment in time what happened on the left side of the plane also happened on the right side of the plane. And I truly believe they would have cross-referenced, checked in, hey, what'd you see? Hey, what'd you hear? There could have been a lot of panic. People panic, people lose their heads. When people start to lose their heads, they start making irrational decisions. But this day, 12 years later, the one thing that stays with me, and I bet if you talk to any passenger on that plane, they'll tell you the same thing. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The guy next to me elbowed me and said, hey man, what's going on? I said, I think we're going back to the airport. I felt it was banking. I thought we were going back to the airport. But after you started banking, I looked out the window and I saw something I'd never seen before. I saw the skyline of Manhattan up close and personal. So I've never seen that before. I looked out a little further. I see this bridge come up. I said, I've never seen that before. And all of a sudden, as we were approaching the bridge, I heard the only words I heard the entire time on this plane. When the captain said, this is your captain. Brace for impact. I never heard that one before. That one got my attention. That's the one that I think, I knew was serious. He uses the word dire. I use serious, whatever it is. It's not good. And I don't know anybody here knows anything about the George Washington Bridge, but the bridge is 600 feet up. The plane was about 1,000 feet and descending at that moment. So we only cleared the bridge by roughly 400 feet. So as we were crossing over the bridge, I looked out the window, and you could actually see people's faces looking up at you. You knew it was close. Immediately, I did two things. First thing I did is I prayed. I prayed, whoever that dude is up front, man, just get me down in one piece. Just get me down. Second thing I prayed for is the last person I spoke with, who was my client up in Brooklyn, to call my wife, tell her I loved her. The third thing is I prayed to God to forgive my sins. I don't want anything between me and God. Just want to going down. I want to go up, and it ain't looking good for me right now. The second thing I did is I reached down in my briefcase and got my wallet out and shoved it down into my pants. Because if something did happen, this looked like it was probably going to happen. At least someone could claim my body. At least somebody would know who I was. And then put my head down. And one of the most often asked questions I still get is, what's it like? You know, you're 60 seconds away from potentially dying, and you can't do anything about it. It's going to happen. What's going on? I tell people what happened. I remember some people, hear some people on the phone, you hear some people texting. But for me, I saw the movie of my life pass before my eyes. It was unbelievable. I saw 4K, vivid, my entire life, from youth to high school, when I met my wife, and the kids were born. I saw everything in 60 seconds. It's an amazing feeling. And you just all of a sudden realize, this is my life. You know what your life is all about when you come down to that final moment. And it was about 60 seconds after we crossed over the bridge, and we crashed into the river. And it was a hard hit. When we hit, I went all the way back to my seat and all the way up my seat, just like that. But when we came back up, I looked out the window, and I saw light. So I knew I had a shot, but I wasn't out. Because you saw how the plane landed, water started coming in immediately. And depending where you were on the plane, and I was towards the back of the plane, water was anywhere from ankle, knee to waist deep, just like that. Now, you saw that picture up there with all the people standing on the wings. And a question I still get is, how do those people get out so quickly? How did that happen? I'm going to tell you what happened. As soon as I looked back into the plane, all of a sudden I saw people jumping up on top of the seats, walking down the seats to get out of the plane. That's how many people got out. And that became a great lesson for me about resourcefulness. Because in life, when you think you may only have one way to get something done, if you're resourceful, open your mind, open your eyes, all of a sudden, many choices come to you.